Every music venue has a story, a culture, and each is a portal to discovery. Kyle Lamont, host and producer of ConcertCast, is your guide on a journey through today's concert culture. Season 1, A Road Trip Around Maine, was released in the wake of a global pandemic. Rocked by the cataclysmic shift, Lamont began to document the movement. In Season 2, we'll connect deeper with thought leaders who are creatively adapting and recalibrating the next rendition of concert-going and culture. In this episode, Lamont talks with Misty Roberts, a tour manager who's worked with Bruno Mars, Metallica, and more, who shares transparent insights into the future of touring and changes she wants to see take center stage.
Long before creating ConcertCast, I was a runner at the Blue Note in Columbia, Missouri. I was a wide-eyed hippie college chick who just couldn't wait to jump on the bus and grab the rider, which is like a fancy term for a grocery list, from the badass tour manager so that I could help them take care of all the little details that would set the band up for a killer show. You know, granola bars, pizza, beer, and sometimes the occasional stage blood request. I loved being a gear in the concert machine. Roadies, managers, promoters, owners, and runners like me all working together to transform a venue. And it was rinse and repeat cycle pretty much every night. But it was always exciting and clearly very impressionable. I thrived on the energy, and the tour managers enchanted me with their wizardry. And to this day, when going to a concert, I like to arrive early so that I can watch the roadies dial everything in. And when orbiting around the venue during a show to take in the varying vantage points, I tend to linger longest behind the production board so that I can watch the sound and lighting engineers work. The telepathy between the band and the tech crew is just remarkable. And after the show, I stay as long as I can, sometimes right up to the point of when security asks me to leave, because watching the roadies disassemble the stage is a thing of wonder. And even from afar, I'll always feel part of an exclusive club. When COVID hit, I felt utter despair for all the tour managers and roadies I've ever worked with, and those I've never met. These humans are instrumental to putting on a concert, and they've built careers on touring. To have it completely pulled out from under them without any support or backup plan was devastating. According to an article in the New York Times about roadies without work, 1,700 respondents in the Production Services Association said that they had suffered depression, and nearly 15% said that they had experienced suicidal thoughts. While researching this unsettling topic and planning an episode from a tour manager's perspective, I luckily happened upon Misty Roberts. She's a veteran tour manager who has strong opinions about happiness and health being top priorities when the touring business comes back online. But before we get there, let's take you to a happy music memory of hers way back in 8th grade. What was your first concert?
Oh my gosh, you're going to laugh. It was New Kids on the Block. I remember sitting on the phone and redialing over and over Ticketmaster to get in line on the phone to get tickets because we didn't have a Ticketmaster outlet to buy tickets.
So was it an arena show?
It was actually an amphitheater. At the time, it was called Sandstone Amphitheater outside of Kansas City. It's in Bonner Springs, and it's been rebranded 8 million times. I have no idea what it's called now.
Have you been there on tour with a band that you were working for?
Believe it or not, I have never gotten to play there on tour. I've gone backstage for other shows, but I've never actually gotten to do a show there. It's still on my bucket list of things to go back to that place that I saw my very first show.
Roberts and I have connected over Zoom for this interview. She's at her podcast studio in LA, but she's originally from Richmond, Kansas, population 2,000, where the average occupation is farmer or factory worker. She discovered how live music could be an outlet during her moody teenage years.
I consider myself super lucky because my era of music was when alternative music started to come to the forefront. I mean, it's super cool for me to be able to say that I snuck in the back door of clubs to go see the Smashing Pumpkins.
In her mid-20s, after a few unfulfilling jobs and an impulsive marriage,
I met a boy, and I was definitely very rebellious, and it seemed like a good idea when he said, "Let's get married." I was like, That will piss everyone off. Absolutely. So I was married for a couple years, really, really young. I was 19 when I got married, and I was about 22 when I got divorced. We parted very amicably.
She ended up moving to Lawrence, Kansas, a very cool college town, and living right next door to the Bottleneck, an iconic music venue.
So that we could make sure that we could get home every night from the bottleneck.
So tell me about that, like how important it was to just like feed the love of live music every night, just to like so much so that you were living down the street from a venue.
I feel like it was the first time in my life that I was surrounded by people that got it, you know? Being raised in a super small town, there are things that are like set out for you. You're not supposed to sneak into the back door of a club to listen to a rock band. I mean, I have so many memories of shows at the Bottleneck and the Granada, and it wasn't just a hobby, it was our life. You would wake up in the morning hungover from the night before and go, who are we seeing tonight? It was your people, it was your place, and it's where you felt comfortable. And I think out of that, I started to realize that spending that time there, I did get to observe all of those bands coming through, and I got to see that there was a path there that can be taken. And it wasn't going to be easy, but nothing in life that's worth it is easy.
During that early time when you were getting interested in like the business side, did you find yourself watching the tech crew or the sound guy maybe more so than the band?
There wasn't the internet. So it wasn't like you could look up an article of who does what on tour and where do you go to school. For me, it was just, well, I guess I'm going to jump into this the same way I kind of have with everything else in my life and just figure it out. Just observing everybody, including the musicians, and being like, am I sure I want to take care of musicians? Because sometimes they're a little crazy. I think I'm by nature a nurturer. I wanted to be the person that made sure that all those people felt good about what they were doing.
She got her feet wet by managing a few local Midwest bands.
In St. Louis, we would do the pageant.
Yes, love that realm.
And Chicago, we would do the double door. And then in Dallas, we would do the entire like Deep Ellum, the whole realm of clubs down there. There were at the time, I think like 7 or 8 different clubs in Deep Ellum that were pretty big name clubs. So yeah, it was a really impressive undertaking for, like I said, a bunch of unsigned bands that didn't have booking agents. We just learned. We taught ourselves.
And from there, she was hired to manage a big-time national tour called Mannheim Steamroller.
Yeah, it's the longest standing Christmas tour in the U.S.
Talk about night and day, going from like rock and roll to like
completely, absolutely like polar opposite. It was 2 hours of Christmas music.
Oh my goodness.
November through, the beginning of January.
It was a much bigger role, which included traveling on a bus for the first time to many different theaters.
I didn't know what to think when I walked in the first day, and I was like, I didn't know how to sleep on a tour bus. Somebody had to tell me which direction to sleep. And, they play all of the normal, new timer jokes on you. Like, don't forget to put on your bunk seatbelt. I'm like, there's a seatbelt? And they're like, so you don't fall out in the middle of the night when we're driving. And I remember the first night, like looking frantically for this seatbelt. And I was like, I don't want to fall out. Like, I don't want them to make fun of me. I don't know any of these people. There's no such thing as a bunk seatbelt. I mean, most of the men that I was out with on that tour had been touring for 40 years. They find nothing more enjoyable than like poking fun at the new kid. They never do it maliciously at all. They do it out of fun.
And then this new kid on the block's career went sky high. She's been the tour manager for Bruno Mars, Metallica, James Taylor, and Enrique Iglesias. Do the artists interview you to be their tour manager? Or how does that process work of being hired?
I mean, on Enrique, I was hired by the production manager as the production coordinator. And then I also kind of segued into like road managing the band a little bit. It generally starts out with management.
What was it for Enrique? Like when you first met him, is it sort of you get to know him a little bit and understand sort of how he rolls? Or is it just you jump into the deep end?
Just jumped in the deep end. That was a really unique scenario. Like the production manager, they had just started a co-headlining tour with Pitbull, and the production manager was really, really sick and had to go home. And they needed someone to come out and just really help move things along. He's an incredible, incredible human. He probably has the best sense of humor of any artist I've ever worked with.
She finds that artists like Enrique and James Taylor, who find a lot of joy in their music and performances, make her job easier, and shares some sweet insight on working with Taylor.
I've never seen someone quite so invested in knowing so much about the people that are working with him. He makes sure that he knows every bus driver's name, every truck driver's name. He knows everyone on the crew, what they do. Sometimes he'll be walking by the trucks, the semi trucks, and go, "What goes in that one? Who's the guy that loads this one? Like, introduce me to him."
What would you say is like a big reputation you have then, or your style? What do people in the tour industry say about you as the tour manager?
I am very honest, sometimes to a fault. I'm trying to figure out how to tamp my brutal honesty sometimes, because I've realized that as much as I like it from people, it is not often received the same way. And I think that I'm also very, very understanding.
What you said earlier, which I liked, was nurturing. You know, it sounds like you nurture people's talent and skills. And that's the big thing with a manager and tour manager, especially, is the skills and pairing people up so that there's a real joint success. And that starts with the tour manager.
I'm also, I would say, one thing that people might say is very resourceful.
Her skills were put to the ultimate test when she set up a concert for Metallica in Antarctica.
I got a phone call from our production manager, and he was like, "So I think we're going to go to Antarctica. Pepsi wants to, or Coke Zero wants to sponsor this trip, and no band has ever played a show in Antarctica. And Metallica this year, we've been to all the other 6 continents, and they want to say that they went to all 7 continents in a year and break the Guinness World Record, or set a Guinness World Record." And I was like, I don't even know how people get to Antarctica.
But she figured it out, and she won't ever forget the Drake Passage.
It's the Drake Passage. And when it's calm, they call it the Drake Lake. And when it's not, they call it the Drake Shake. And we got the Drake Shake. And it was supposed to take us about 2 days to get there. And it took us almost 4 because the storm kept pushing us back. And I have video of waves that were 3 times taller than the boat. And I thought we were going to die. And I was so seasick.
Once they arrived, it was all hands on deck to set up their stage, which was inside a giant igloo. And the show was arranged to be a silent disco because there was a real concern of glaciers breaking off from the sonic vibrations. The, shall we say, gut-wrenching work was all worth it.
And then I got to stand there on a helicopter port in Antarctica and have all these research scientists come and see a rock show with like one of the world's biggest rock bands. And it was amazing.
There are elements to tour managing that aren't picture perfect. It's no secret that the industry is male-centric. I was wondering if there was an event or moment that happened to you while on tour that you learned a lot from about the industry and also about yourself as a person.
Absolutely. I got fired from a tour, and I had not ever been fired from anything before, ever. But it did also show me the importance of small steps too. We are making steps, and we do need to acknowledge those all the time. We also need to acknowledge that everything is not a female versus male fight. This isn't a fight to silence one voice for the other, that it's a fight for equality for both. I think that I had slipped into a little bit of a mindset of, if you're a man, you better get the fuck out of my way. And in hindsight, when I had to step back and take a look at all of it, I had to go, okay, I took a part in that. And I'm not proud of the methods or the way that I was acting to get the point across. And I'll do better next time.
So, what would you say to women starting out in the industry?
You don't need to smash stuff. There is something to be said for the feminine energy that is brought into a conversation. Let that come out on its own. Hone those skills and then be yourself. First of all, give it time to find who you want to be and how you want to represent yourself in any industry. Harness that and use it.
While at home recalibrating, COVID hit, and Roberts refocused her energy to host a 10-week mental health webinar series geared towards roadies.
One of them, Dave Sherman, is a substance abuse counselor and kind of a life coach type person. And then I had Taryn Longo, who is a trauma and somatic therapist. And we did, a different subject every week of how to navigate through all of this. I don't think that I gave up on the idea of when things were going to come back, but I also didn't want to live in it every day. I didn't want to wake up every day and go, is today the day I get my industry back? So I really threw myself into learning different skills,
including podcasting. She currently hosts a daily podcast called The Misty and Ike Show that allows listeners to escape through laughter.
I'm Misty.
And I'm Ike.
The next 15 minutes,
We're going to debate pop culture.
They talk about everything under the pop culture sun, and their charismatic dynamic is reminiscent of talk radio.
Opinions.
from pop rocks in your lunchbox.
To Happy Meal toys and swatch clocks.
I did start to make a habit for a while of when we were driving to the venue in the morning of going up front and sitting with the bus driver and having him turn on local radio so that I could hear those people talk to each other. There's just an openness that comes with them. There's a vulnerability that comes out of it that is something that I don't think that you get in a lot of things anymore.
My personal favorite episode was number 53, where they talk about the origins of band names. The show makes great use of fun sound effects, and their banter is genuine.
Everything I say is going to get applause today.
It is. I like that. I enjoy
Meow.
that. Meow. I have one for you.
Okay.
And this makes me really excited because I love it when you can full circle some shit. Where Phoenix got their name.
Okay.
The French pop outfit Phoenix named themselves
I
after
get to
Phoenix,
think about
a
something
song
and
on
go,
Network, an
I'm going to
album
make
by
something that
Daft Punk.
hopefully just makes somebody laugh today.
But it's her valuable experience in the industry that has major organizations and conferences bringing her on panels to share thoughts on what the touring industry will look like post-COVID. She thinks that the future of touring needs to be more human-focused, and that the industry has a chance to recreate a more sustainable and healthy model that puts people first.
We were very caught up in a repetitive cycle of what's your next gig, having your next gig lined up halfway through the tour, ticket sales getting more and more expensive because you needed more and more production. And I think with the absence of all of that, we have an opportunity to really look at our industry and go, we were really unhealthy. And I hope very much that we are able to take a lot of the things that we've learned this last year into a new mode of touring.
While understanding the importance of the bottom line, she's also concerned about the well-being of the crew who typically push their mental and physical health aside.
The attitudes that come out of touring, when you add the ego in with exhaustion and bad nutrition and taking a day off in a hotel room to just try to recharge yourself because you've had 4 shows in a row and you're exhausted to the point that you can't even move, those are not productive humans. And I feel like if we could make some very humane allowances, that we could really bring a big shot of humanity into the game for everyone.
You're sort of positioning a viewpoint here where perhaps COVID is recentering people, and maybe bands or tours might be a little bit more focused on the experience for everyone. So it's less volume, right? And more meaningful.
We lost everything that we really had based our lives off of. Because like I said, I think that we get into touring and we get in this tunnel vision of what's the next tour? What am I doing? How much more money can I make? Where am I going to go on this one? I just think that everyone, when they come back, is going to have to make a lot of compromises. And I think it's completely doable because we have seen the cracks. We've seen the cracks in a very, very large way.
She goes on to say how important it will be to not only have a COVID safety officer, but possibly even a human resource officer. Someone who's there to help roadies and musicians work their way through collective PTSD and help better manage life situations.
Roadies are kind of known at times for being hot-headed already. I can't imagine what that's going to look like when the stress of putting up the first show is happening and the stress of getting vaccine passports looked at. We're going to have a lot of people that are going to come back that are in desperate financial shape, that it would be really helpful if they knew that they could go and talk to somebody and say, can you help me look up somewhere that I can look for some kind of a loan to catch up on my mortgage?
And she also envisions a focus on physical health.
I do think that there will be a big trend in hopefully trying to stay healthier, nutrition-wise out on the road. I think that you're going to see tours that are going to take out personal trainers, not just for the artists and the musicians anymore, that they'll make themselves available to people on the crew as well. I don't think that we've done a really good job in the past of taking advantage of the places that we're in. We're in sports arenas. Open up the basketball court. Let guys go play basketball for an hour in the afternoon after we're done with load-in. Some physical activity other than lifting a beer to your face on the bus after the show's over. A lot of people, first of all, have gotten very, very into taking better care of themselves during the pandemic. So hopefully that goes back out on tour as well.
Even though Roberts is excited to get back on the road with her industry experience, she's realistic and transparent with expectations.
There's no possible way that I would want to be a part of the first few tours that go back out. I don't want to invent that wheel. It's going to be very, very difficult. And, there's a lot of conversation in our industry too about pay rates being lower when we go back out. There's no possible way with the addition of duties that are going to be added on to a tour manager or production coordinator that I would take less than what I was taking before. You're going to be expected to really be dealing with the health and safety. Like, it's no longer food and lodging, it's health and safety. And that's a different ballgame.
It would take a very mindful tour to bring her out of the podcast studio and back on the road.
I love the idea at this point of going out on a tour because I want to, not because I have to. If I were to hop back out on tour tomorrow, I would want it to be with a management company and an artist that I really truly can align with and that I feel like understand the value of crew. I miss the travel so much. I've really taken time this year to think about how much I did not appreciate the places that I had the opportunity to go. And I want another run at that. I also have that pie in the sky idea that maybe our podcast takes off and we go out and tour and do our podcast live. I love the idea that, maybe somebody's my tour manager for a minute. I think that there would be nothing more fun than that.
Tell me what venue you're excited to get back to.
Oh, I cannot wait for the Hollywood Bowl. There is something about doing a show at the Hollywood Bowl that it was always one of my bucket list places, and it just has a different feeling. It just resonates different every time I'm there. I actually have only seen one show at the Hollywood Bowl myself. I'm always backstage, and I'm going to make it a point to go to more shows at the Hollywood Bowl whenever I can. That way I can get that feeling that everybody else does. I feel like if I can keep recapturing that feeling myself, it will keep me in line with all those things that I've learned this year.
After our interview, I couldn't help but think about how tomorrow's wide-eyed runners might be making more smoothie runs than beer runs, or bringing roadies and musicians to the nearest gym instead of smoking J's with them in the back alley or green room. So much of the touring lifestyle is built on wild nights and chaos. Is it possible to have a holistic approach to touring, or will the concert industry lose its edge? Will roadies choose to swap beers for basketballs? Or maybe it's a more subtle shift from needing to cope and escape from exhaustion to celebrating the love of live music with renewed energy. Clearly, the concert industry has an interesting opportunity to reinvent itself, prioritizing people over profit and exchanging immediacy for sustainability. Like Robert said, COVID has shown the industry its cracks. So why push people to fall through them again?
Little things that go a long way. Donate to NIVA, the National Independent Venue Association, to save our stages. And to Backline.care, a nonprofit organization that connects music industry professionals and their families with a trusted network of mental health and wellness providers. Our resident mastermind is Mark Tuckashan. Editor and engineer is Peter McGill. Our supervising producer is Heidi Stanton-Drew. Special thanks to Misty Roberts, Pepper Little, Amy Charlie, Cara Romano, Eddie Contento, Jesse Kudo, and thank you for listening.